The tassels sway like a slow metronome above the stage. Gold against floodlights that run hot enough to dry the air. And I am standing at the end of row H with a printed card that says, Guest, though the card beside my name on the online list has for the past month said family. A volunteer usher with a clipboard shifts his weight between polished shoes, glances at the laminated map, and then at me. He has been brief, politely firm, as if firmness could be a kind of courtesy. My ex is 5 rows ahead, straight shoulders, new suit, and a grin that finds every camera like it's his job. In the next minutes, you'll see how a person like me handles this, not by raising my voice, but by raising documents, timestamps, and witnesses until the paper becomes a scaffold and the truth climbs it in front of everyone. The hall smells of varnish and warm plastic from the stage lights. Cold air hums along the ceiling vents, a steady white noise that makes whispers sound like confessions. On the aisle, a little boy in a needle-striped waistcoat kicks his shoes. Heel to toe, each tap a small impatience. I balance my phone in my palm, screen brightness down to courteous. The seating diagram on the university portal is still open. The log showing my sign-in yesterday, 1942 IP ending 214. The card beside my name had shown family, because 6 months ago, when Adil and I were still a we, I was the emergency contact. When couples come apart, institutions need a clear toggle. Here, someone toggled for me last night, 2011, and did it without my consent. I don't move. My suit is heat-absorbing charcoal. The hem of my dupatta threads out a loose silk at the edge. The Ushers supervisor has been called a woman with a radio and a calm voice. She's the kind of person who knows all the exits and never points. I hear her before I see her. Copy approaching row H. The radio's static carries like a brittle ribbon through the rows. I look ahead and see Adil's mother, Shabana, in a shimmering powder blue sari. Her lipstick has always been precise, like she signs words before speaking them. She has the family row, of course. His father, Imran, sits with a practiced neutrality of community leaders who know cameras are watching. Beside them, a girl I haven't met but recognize the fiancé. Probably sits with a gentle, performative smallness, her hands folded as if she's been folded too. The supervisor arrives and offers a neutral smile. We can seat you in the guests' row. Thank you, I say, my voice steady. But that would disregard the registrar's, the 9th of September approval and the confirmation email that followed. It would also disregard the rescission protocol, which requires a written request from the listed graduate, verified by ID and countersigned by the registrar's staff, to change seating within 48 hours. I have the policy saved. The supervisor's eyebrows rise a millimeter, the smallest acknowledgement that some people carry their own weather. Then let me check with the registrar's desk, she says. Please do, I reply, and forward her the PDF from my phone with the subject line intact. Family seating card allocation, Riemann-Appersed. The attachment name seating policy _convocation 225 _rev B. PDF because I audit for a living. My folder names are clipped and fully spelled, and my heart rate is a readable object. 5 rows ahead, Adil half turns as if sound has mass and mine brushed his shoulder. He finds me, then looks away. That tiny flinch lands. The scent of marigold garlands drifts, heavy and bright, from bouquets along the aisle. Someone's cologne hangs a shade sweet under the cold air from the vents. Seems I'm not family. If you know me, you know I don't lob lines. I pin things with dates. We broke up in June because he decided, cheerfully, that future planning was stifling. He said it kindly, which was worse, because it meant he thought the cruelty wouldn't count. But the month before, when his project went sideways because a vendor vanished with a deposit, he called me. I bridged his mess with a call tree I built in an hour, sketched triage on a legal pad, and saved his deliverable by reversing a payment before cutoff through a bank manager I used to advise on audit compliance. I didn't send him my consulting rate. I sent him a screenshot of the reversal confirmation code instead. He replied with a heart and a line about fate. It would be funny if it didn't end up expensive. The supervisor returns with an usher captain who carries authority like a roll of fabric. It unfurls as she speaks. Ms. Remen, the captain says, the registrar confirms a change was made at 22:11 last night. The request came from a phone call to the security desk, routed to staff by a person claiming to be the graduate's mother. They did not file the change in writing. That was an error on our side. I feel the light shift along the stage like a wave. Thank you for confirming the breach, I say. The policy requires the change to be filed, signed, recorded, and time-stamped. Since it wasn't, the prior assignment stands. I would like to be seated accordingly. Understood, the captain replies. Her glance to the supervisor is a small stamp of alignment. We move, not rushed, just inexorable, down the aisle. A hush moves with us, curious and polite. The ushers lift the velvet cord with the same care they'd reserve for a ribbon at a ceremonial opening. And they place me in the family row. The chair metal is cool against my palm. Shabana looks at the captain, not at me. Adil looks at his knees. Imran's neutral expression doesn't move, but a pulse at his temple tells me his calm costs something. Apologies for the inconvenience, the captain says. We'll file an incident report. Please include that I offered evidence on my device and forwarded the policy PDF. Say? And the captain nods. Professional, not defensive. This is not about bruising anyone. It's about the record. The ceremony starts with a piece of music that sounds like 1,000 beginnings. The MC's voice is warm. When the first names are called, confetti guns are still sheathed. But their barrels catch the light and glint like small lighthouses. I sit with my hands folded, my breath measured, my back straight. The silk of my dupatta rasps softly under my wristwatch. The watch was a gift from Adil on a weekend we drove to Hawks Bay and ate grilled corn with salt and lime while the water ran in sheets. I keep the watch not because of him, but because it tells time and does not lie. People always imagine that a story like this starts here in public, but the work begins in private. In small rooms with fluorescent lights and the smell of printer ink. In browser windows with log histories, in ethics policies that most people scroll past. 7 days ago, when the graduation passes were released, I printed mine at 10:07 with the QR coded in the corner. At 10:11, the system logged a secondary print attempt tagged to an unrecognized device. I flagged it. The registrar's office called me back at 12:03. A clerk named Sana, who sounded like she arranged her pens by color. She confirmed the second attempt failed. Protocol would have been to lock my pass and issue me a fresh one at the desk with ID instead. Yesterday at 22:11, a phone call changed the seating card label attached to my profile. They didn't switch the QR, they switched the word. The row smells of talc and flowers. And something faintly medicinal from the retired gentleman beside me who has done this before. Sat for a child's moment of crossing a stage. He nods when our eyes meet. People who have been through procedures respect procedure. I want to tell you what made me into a person who keeps receipts like oxygen. It wasn't my job title, though. Operations auditor makes it sound ordained. It was growing up in an apartment with a mother who ran our life like a ledger and a father, who taught physics and liked proofs, because proofs don't gossip. When a taxi driver once tried to overcharge my mother by switching notes in his lap, she didn't shout. She folded the larger note into a paper triangle to mark it. Asked to see the note again to be sure, and when he produced the smaller, she pinched the corner of his seat cover, pulled back the fabric, and pointed to the larger note wedged there with the triangle still crisp. She didn't call him a thief. She called him son, then asked for the correct change. He gave it, looked both relieved and undone. I learned then that mercy without proof becomes rumor. Mercy with proof becomes policy. When Adil and I first started, he joked that I was the process queen, and I laughed because it sounded like a crown. He worked in community outreach for an education nonprofit. He was good in rooms he could charm someone into opening their calendar, their budget, their story. He made people feel seen. He made me feel like someone worth putting on a list without asking. The first red flag was small. He saved the contact of his ex under a single letter V. I saw it on his phone one night when we were ordering biryani. He said it was a vendor. I believed him because the food arrived hot and we were laughing. Later, when he began deflecting questions with compliments, calling me clever when I asked where he was on a Friday, I recognized the tactic from Risk interviews. Substitute praise for an answer and hope I'll take the compliment as a receipt. I didn't. I began keeping a different ledger, not of his sins, but of what I would not accept. Back in the hall, the dean steps up to the microphone. We are only minutes from Adil's name. I know because I memorized the order while making tea this morning. Some people pray over mornings like this. I read lists. The air is colder now. The stagehands adjust the lights by increments. The beams soften like the way afternoon slides into evening without anyone authorizing it. Graduan Adil Imran, the MC says, and the row inhales as if we have a single rib cage. He stands, adjusts his gown, checks the angle of his cap. He looks back at us because that's where cameras live. His eyes flicker, undecided about where to rest. He takes the steps to the stage as if he has counted them, which he probably has. He's a planner when applause is guaranteed. It might have ended here. A petty attempt to reduce me to a general guest, countered by a policy citation and a calm usher. But the thing about process is that it creates doorways you didn't know you would need. Last week, the nonprofit where Adil works launched a graduation scholarship program for first-generation students. The ceremony tonight doubles as a public relations moment. On the program handout, there's a QR code to donate. The board chair is in attendance. The charity's bank handles their escrow. And I know from work that the bank manager also takes compliance seriously enough to miss weddings for audits. Yesterday, just before dinner, I received a text from a junior at the nonprofit, someone I've mentored through a financial literacy workshop. Dee, she wrote, is it normal to change seating at convocation using the security desk? We were told not to accommodate those requests. I stared at the message, felt that familiar second heart I have for patterns begin ticking faster. I asked what happened. She said she overheard Adil's mother asking a guard to fix the seating card because she isn't family anymore, and that the guard dialed someone and passed the phone to her. The junior had been told to guard the donor tables. She had ears, though. It was 21:59. I did not reply right away. I made tea. I sat on the balcony while the city exhaled heat from concrete. Then I opened my laptop and began to gather screenshots, my original approval, the registrar's policy on seating changes, the system log reflecting my login and the failed attempt to reprint, the donor program PDF with the charity's registry information, the nonprofit's whistleblower policy, which I had downloaded in February for a training I volunteered to give, and my message thread with the junior, whose name I will not print here because not all compliances are public. At 22:28, I wrote to the registrar's office, CCing the convocation coordinator and the security chief, attaching 2 PDFs and 1 JPEG with file names that explain themselves. I did not threaten. I cited clauses and offered timestamps. I wrote, please treat this as notice of an attempted unauthorized change to an assigned status. I will attend as planned. At 22:43, sent Rasatha bank manager a message with a single sentence. If an NGO client routes a last-minute vendor payment after 10 p.m., do you freeze for morning verification or process? He replied within 3 minutes, because this is the kind of question that makes him feel like he's protecting something. Freeze for verification when change of beneficiary and last-minute routing coincide. Why? I typed, because a donor drive is tomorrow and I think someone might redirect a pledge. Please be on alert for change requests. He sent a thumbs up and then, uncharacteristically, a second message. You always call at the right second. I slept. When I woke, the sky was a sheet of beaten tin. Karachi heat carries even in the morning, like a promise you can't ask to be rescinded. On the way to the hall, I stopped by the registrar's office with printed copies of what I'd sent. I asked to file a physical incident report. Paper can be lost, but it's honest about how it goes missing. The clerk stamped the top right corner with the date and time. The ink bled a little where the paper was humid. She took my ID, matched it to the profile. We have your note, she said. We've briefed the ushers. I thanked her and left a spare copy of the policy on the counter in case anyone needed an ethical mirror. When Adil's name is called in the hall, he strides, smiles, bows to the dean, shakes hands with the chancellor, poses for the camera. He doesn't trip because we never do when falling would be a lesson too on the nose. He returns to our row and glances at his family as if he expects applause to accrue interest. Then he looks at me. Whatever he planned to do with that, look, show me something, maybe a victory. I don't give him the object. I keep my face smooth. The film crew pans across the row. The light warms for a second, then cools again. After the ceremony in the atrium, the air smells like icing sugar and printer toner. The charities booth is beside the refreshments table. Banners upright, volunteers in polos, the donation QR on a stand. The board chair stands nearby with a glass of pineapple juice that sweats down her wrist. She is poised in that way that makes poise into armor. Adil joins her, the family in small orbit behind him. The fiancée Rima, I will learn, keeps a hand on Shabana's elbow, gentle and attentive, which is kind and wins a spring in my chest because kindness used wrong is an alibi. I walk up to the booth and greet the junior with my calmest voice. You look like a line of code that compiles, I say, and she grins, the fear in her eyes stepping back by inches. I scan the QR, not to donate yet, but to see the endpoint. It resolves to a payment page under their bank's merchant gateway. Clean. Raza's compliance fingerprints are in the framing. Good, congratulations, I say to the board chair, whose name tag reads Ms. Gall. She smiles a smile that could balance a ledger. Thank you, she says, glanced approved. Your family. I'm an auditor, I reply. Sometimes the same thing. Adil looks like a person calculating whether to say my name in public. His father nods at me, a small correct courtesy. Shabana does not nod. I wanted to mention, I say, projecting not volume, but clarity. That last night at 20 to 11, there was an unauthorized attempt to alter convocation seating assignments via the security desk. The registrar has filed an incident report. I'm telling you because the charity is launching a donor drive and you'll want to be sure your process for change requests is secure. I hold up a crisp envelope, the motif of my life-containing printed copies, the registrar's policy, my approval, the incident acknowledgement, the message thread with the junior redacted to protect her, and a note summarizing the timeline with times and initials. The board chair's face shifts not into alarm, but into focus. She takes the envelope. The paper rests in her hand like a fact. Thank you, she says, and means it. Because people who sit on boards know that how a thing is handled in the minute becomes the story told in the year. Shabana laughs, not unkindly, just dismissive. This is family drama, she says. We don't need to involve the university. The usher captain appears at my shoulder like a second spine. The university is already involved, she says, still neutral. We corrected the seating per policy. Adil clears his throat. Nadia, he says, and there it is, my name in his mouth like a IOU. This isn't necessary. It is, I reply. Because when processes are bent for personal convenience, people who need those processes lose. Today it was a seating card. Tomorrow, it could be how a pledge is rooted or who has the authority to change a beneficiary at 10 p.m. Raza arrives, as if summoned by the word beneficiary. His tie slightly askew, his eyes bright. We're monitoring, he says to the board chair. Any last-minute beneficiary change requests on this account will be frozen pending morning verification. He looks at me and nods once. As discussed. The board chair turns to Adil. Were you aware of this? The question is a clean blade. Adil opens his mouth, closes it. His mother steps in, her voice making the mistake of trying to be casual. I made a call, she says. It's nothing. The girl is not family anymore. The sound in the atrium shifts. The volunteers go still. The camera operator from the university TV station lifts his lens. Then lowers it, then lifts it again, because restraint is a virtue, but missing a story is a sin. I don't look at the camera. I look at the board chair. The operative question isn't whether I am or am not family. I say quietly, audibly. It's whether your organization values process enough to keep it from becoming optional in moments of convenience. If you do, you'll act. If you don't, you'll have a leak in your credibility, not your funds. The board chair breathes. Once, a visible counted inhale. We'll review the seating incident with the registrar, she says, not with PR polish, but with policy muscle. In the meantime, all donation rerouting requests are suspended for the next 48 hours pending a standard audit review. Ms. Remen, would you be willing to advise us informally on tightening the change request protocol this week? Gladly, I say. I don't look at a deal when I say it. I look at the junior who sets her shoulders in a way that means she might sleep tonight. Shabana's mouth tightens. You're making a spectacle, she says, not to me, but to the air. Spectacles are for entertainment, I say. This is a record. The camera operator catches that because certain sentences were built to be evidence. The registrar's coordinator approaches with a clipboard and a 4-man incident summary for signature. We'll file this now, notarize a copy for you tomorrow, she says. She doesn't ask if I need it, she knows I do. She pulls a pen from behind her ear and hands it to me. I sign, date, and hand it back. She countersigns. The stamp lands with a sound like a small verdict. Adil speaks. You could have just texted, he says, and there is a plea there. The wish for private corridors. He is not cruel. He is careless. Carelessness is the softest kind of harm because it makes the harmed feel fussy for naming it. I did text, I say. Sena at the registrar. Raza at the bank. I texted the people whose jobs it is to prevent small breaches from becoming large ones. He swallows. The fiancée Rima meets my eyes. There is something in her gaze like a quiet apology, not for me, maybe to herself. She is very young, which is not an alibi either. The lights in the atrium shift as the sun dips outside, the glass ceiling turning the sky into a big, slow movie. The breeze from the open doors smells faintly of rain, though it won't rain. The city sometimes tries on mercy without committing. The board chair turns to the camera operator. We won't be discussing this on record, she says, and he nods, disappointed but professional. Of course, he says, which means he'll still run the image of policy in public. Which is fine because images of policy do their own work. We move into the part of the evening where speeches turn into clusters of people and goodbyes. I don't ask to speak to Adil alone. That era is concluded. He approaches me anyway because endings itch. He stands at the exact polite distance. He looks at my wristwatch, which he recognizes, which is sometimes how hauntings work. I didn't ask my mother to do that, he says. I know, I reply. She did it because she thought she could. That's the problem. You benefit from people bending rules around you. You don't have to ask. He looks injured, then thoughtful. The second is a better wound. You think I don't notice this stuff? He says. I think you notice and choose to let it carry you, I say. I prefer to walk. He nods, once. You looked good today, he says, which is the kind of small compliment people offer as if they're leaving a tip. I let it fall where it lands. The junior swings by and slips a folded paper into my hand. Her written statement, time-stamped, signed. Just in case, she whispers. I tuck it into the envelope. The envelope feels heavier now, but lighter in the way that carrying right things lightens you. By Monday, the incident report is notarized, and I have a certified copy pinned to a folder in my desk. The charity's website publishes an update to their donation procedure. All beneficiary changes must be filed, witnessed, and verified with a 24-hour cooling period. The board chair emails to thank me and offers a small stipend for my time, which I donate back to the scholarship fund because not all compensations are money. Raza forwards me the internal memo he sent at 6:53 on Sunday, effective immediately. Late hour beneficiary change requests for NGO clients require dual authorization. Exceptions must be escalated. He CCD compliance. He likes Sing compliance the way some people like fresh mangoes. At the university, The registrar circulates a training note to ushers. Seating designation changes must be filed in writing, recorded and approved by the registrar. Verbal requests, including those routed via security, are not to be acted upon. There's a small line at the end. Thanks to Ms. N. Ramin for her diligence. It's a little embarrassing to read, which is the price of visible accuracy. Within the nonprofit, I hear because institutions speak in drafts that the board chair asked for a review of discretionary privileges in family-led initiatives. Adil does not lose his job. He is good at it. But he loses something he did not think was a thing: the option to leave structure to other people. His mother sends me no message, which is a message. 2 weeks later, I receive a small envelope in the mail, thick cream paper, my name handwritten in an elegant older hand. Inside is a card. For your records, it reads. It's the registrar's formal apology, signed by the chancellor, acknowledging the policy breach and the corrective action taken. It is not necessary. Nothing will unspool merely because of last night's air, but it is correct. I file it behind the incident report, a paper behind a paper, layers like rings in a tree. I also receive separately a text from Rima. Hi, it says, congratulations to us on surviving a ceremony. Thank you for how you handled things. May I ask you a boring question sometime about security settings? I reply with a time and a coffee place that has good light and seats that don't tilt. When we meet, she shows me her phone. I show her how to label contacts in plain names, how to keep app permissions confined, how to keep her banking alerts turned on. She does not tell me anything about her relationship, and I don't ask. Boundaries are also a process, and I file hours in the category of possible kindness. On a Thursday evening at home, I clean my balcony table, wipe away the dust that returns faster than any calendar can predict, and set out a small potted basil that smells like deliberate summer. I brew tea. The cup warms my hands in a way that feels like proof. My phone buzzes with an email from the registrar. New policy revision attached. I open it and smile at the clause number that references incident file. 2025 Conavy 311. Seating designations are not definitions of personal relationship status. They are administrative categories. Requests to alter designations must comply with procedural requirements. That sentence is a small, elegant victory. Language is a room with locks. I receive a photo from the charity's first scholarship awardee standing with a certificate, beaming, her parents holding hands. The caption reads, "Process, let her get here." I don't cry, not because crying makes a mess of mascara, but because I prefer to savor wins like handwritten notes. I save the photo, add the date. File it in a folder named Good News_2025 on the shelf beside my desk. A tin holds leftover confetti I swept from my chair the night of the ceremony. Sometimes I let a few pieces fall onto the desk as I work. The paper circles land without sound. Light from the window slides across them, then off, and that movement is a little show. We tell ourselves that justice needs a stage. Sometimes justice needs an usher with a clipboard, a captain with a radio, a registrar with a stamp, a bank manager with a freeze protocol, a board chair with a spine. I did not set out to embarrass anyone. I set out to be seated where the record said I belonged, and to record what happened when someone tried to move me without the paper and the witness. The world does not change because a single seating card was honored. It changes because every such card is a chance to teach a system not to trust charm over signatures. On my balcony, the evening smells like dust and basil and the faint iron of a coming heat. Down on the street, a fruit seller calls out. Long vowels, the most reliable thing in the city. A neighbor kid on a bicycle loops along the lane with elbows out like small wings. I watch him wobble, recover, learn his balance again and again. Light settles into the folds of the buildings and disappears there, patient as a ledger. Inside, on my desk, the envelope with the incident report sits like a quiet trophy. I don't display it. I keep it ready. Seems I'm not family. Once that line reduced me to the category someone else named. Now it reads like a diagnostic I can hand to a process, which will then do what processes do when they are made to serve the truth instead of someone's convenience. File, stamp, correct, revise, and move on. I go with it. I do my work. I keep my chair. If you've ever been quietly moved off a list you earned, say the word and I'll share the template. I used policy citations, incident log, and escalation script. If this story helped pass it to one person who needs the reminder that procedure is not petty, it's how we make dignity stick.